we'd like to welcome the National Zakât Foundation. We have Mufti Sufyan. We also have our sister who will help with the Q&A in the sister section. So without any further delay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen wa ba'd. It's a great blessing of Allah the Almighty that He has granted us all the ability to gather in such an honorable gathering to speak about a fundamental pillar of Islam that many of us overlook. Before we start and carry on and proceed, I'd just like to apologize for the delay. Unexpected things happened, and unfortunately there was some unexpected traffic, etc., due to which we were a bit delayed. Now, moving on, because we're short of time, with regards to Zakât, many of us were unaware of the rulings, many of us are unaware of the intricacies, many of us, we overlook the fact whether we have to pay Zakât or not. And the reason for this is because we forget the purpose of our creation. We forget the purpose why we have been sent to this world. So our purpose of creation is to worship Allah. So when we have to worship Allah, we have to make sure we take into aspect everything that Allah has ordered us to do. And you have to understand that Allah the Almighty, He orders us to pay Zakât. And when Allah orders us to something, we have to do it. Imagine if you were a parent, or many of us over here will be parents. Imagine if you were a teacher and you had a young student, or you tell your children, do this. So for example, I tell my child, if I had a child, or if I'm a teacher, I tell my student, close this door. Now if the student or the child doesn't listen, how do we feel? We feel really bad, we don't like it. We feel that, I'm a person of authority over him, he should be respecting me. I'm ordering him to do something, he's got the ability to do it and he's not doing it. Obviously, what would you do? You would deprive him of some of his benefits. For example, if it's your child, you will ground him, you will deprive him from using games, playing games, etc., because he's not listening to you. Now, Allah the Almighty, a number of times in the Quran, He orders us to pay Zakât. So when Allah is ordering us and we are not listening, what are we doing? We're blanking Allah the Almighty. Imagine how Allah the Almighty is feeling, where Allah is ordering us to pay something or do something and we're not doing it. Obviously Allah is going to be sad. Allah won't like it deep down that we are not listening to His commands. So if we take it from this angle and this perspective, that Allah is ordering us and we shouldn't be blanking Him, just like 5 times daily salah, we have to pray, we shouldn't be blanking Allah. Allah is ordering us. Likewise, Zakât as well is a fundamental pillar, and Zakât has been mentioned with Salah, in connection with Salah, approximately 28 times in the Quran, like we will be mentioning. And Salah is something that we do day in, day out, 5 times daily. So when it comes with Zakât, Allah mentions it with Zakât. That also emphasizes the importance of Zakât as well in itself. Now, if we go into the things where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned regarding Zakât, where a person, if he doesn't give Zakât, the punishments are very severe. One punishment, it comes in a hadith, that a person that has the ability to pay Zakât is compulsory upon him and he doesn't pay it, on the Day of Judgment, his wealth will be turned into a boiled serpent. And according to some narrations, it says, the serpent will have 2 dots, etc., or 2 horns, according to a narration, and that will coil a person's neck, and it will strangle the person, and it will say, I am your wealth that you hoarded, so the wealth that you never paid Zakât on. So this is a punishment, and are we really ready to face such punishments? No. It comes in the Quran that those people that do not pay Zakât, يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ, their wealth, it will be burnt in the fire of hell. So just for example, like metal we've got, if we were to burn it in a fire, then it becomes really hot. So likewise, the wealth will be heated in the fire of hell. And after that, that will be branded on a person's forehead, on his flanks, on his back, etc. So this is a punishment that's been mentioned in the Quran. So we shouldn't be taking these punishments lightly. We should understand that zakat is something of real importance. So if it's something that's compulsory upon us and we have to pay it, then we should be paying it. And if we don't know whether we're paying it or not, then alhamdulillah, we attending such courses to find out if we have to pay, if we're eligible to pay, if we're eligible to even receive it, etc., who should be paying it to, etc. Now moving on, zakat, the meaning of zakat. What does zakat literally mean? Zakat, it means purification, because it purifies our wealth. It also means growth, and it also means blessing. So when we pay zakat, whenever we give money in the path of Allah, Allah gives back manifold, and there's an increase in our wealth. It may not be apparent physically, we may not be able to see it literally. However, the blessings are there, and Allah does make ways through the unseen, and obviously we may not be able to see it, but through the unseen Allah helps us, increasing our wealth, etc. And normally I give an example of blessings. This is not always the case. However, if we want to understand blessings, how are blessings increased in our life? So for example, if we give in the path of Allah, there's many narrations, just like in zakat, etc., where there's mentioned that it's a means of blessings in our wealth. So what happens sometimes in life is a person may have less money. He may not be well off. However, that person, Allah grants him so much blessings in his life that he, for example, his car will not break often, his house will not break often, he will not have to pay unnecessary expenses in things that are unexpected. So for example, his boiler will break, his kitchen, there will be issues with the kitchen. And because of that, because he's lacking in blessings in his life, he has to give a lot of money. This is an example of a person that has not been granted blessings. So the example I was giving is a person who's got less money, however he's been granted a lot of blessings in his life, where all these unnecessary expenses, Allah does not make them compulsory upon him. Allah does not ordain them upon him. So for example, his car will not break often. He will not have to give unnecessary expenses. But on the other side, we've got a person who's really rich. He doesn't pay his zakat. He apparently is really rich, he's got a lot of wealth, etc. But what happens is, his car will break often. He will have to pay unnecessary expenses all of a sudden. So for example, he have a lot of calamities in his life where he'll have to fork out money, he'll have to cash out money, etc. So this is an example of a person who's got a lot of money but has not been granted blessings because he's not acting upon the commandments of Allah, he's not paying his zakat, etc. Now if we go into the Sharia terminology of zakat, what does zakat mean according to the Sharia terminology in Islam? Transferring ownership of a part of one's wealth as specified by the lawgiver to be given to a poor Muslim, except one who is from the Banu Hashim, cutting off totally any material benefit returning to the giver for the sake of Allah. So transferring ownership, tamlik. Remember, when we give money, when we give zakat, then it's necessary that we give it to a person. It has to be given in the ownership of a person. So we cannot give zakat to, for example, towards the masjid, for the masjid to use. So the masjid can't use it in the masjid expenses, i.e. the committee, etc. They cannot use it in the building of the masjid, etc. It has to be given to a poor person. So if we give it to an organization, then what they normally do is, so we can give it to an organization that gives it to poor people on our behalf. So we can do that, but they have to give it to a poor person. It has to be given physically, literally, in the person's hand, or obviously in his possession. So for example, in his or her bank account, etc. However, remember, we don't have to give zakat just in cash. We can give it in other means as well. So for example, if there's a poor student that we know, he's in need of books, we can buy the books for him from the zakat money and give the books in his ownership, etc. And likewise, for example, in some places, what they would do, like in many institutes, Islamic institutes, you give zakat money to them and they give it to their students as a bursary, etc. So they do give it physical ownership to them. So this is what it is, but we'll go more in detail inshallah later on. So remember, this ownership is necessary. So don't just give money to your own masjid as zakat. So for example, when we have the Friday collections, many people misunderstand and think that we can give zakat to the Friday collection that goes around, etc. We can just give it and that's our zakat money. No, we have to give it in the physical ownership of a person, or obviously a person that's worthy of receiving it as well. It can't just be any person, but we'll go more in detail who's eligible to receive zakat. Or we can give it to an organization that does this on our behalf. And remember, when we give it to a poor person, he cannot be of the Banu Hashim, a person that is a descendant of the Prophet ﷺ. Who are the Banu Hashim? Those people basically that are descendants of Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. These people cannot receive it. And they can receive other means. For example, if you want to give it to a poor person that's a descendant of the Prophet ﷺ, you can give other, for example, lillah or charity, etc. But not this zakat you cannot give, yeah? Now, why pay zakat? It purifies the soul from greed and wealth from impurity, because many times, many people that are very rich and wealthy or have money, what happens is when you have something in abundance, then you become so attached to that you don't want to leave it. So it gets rid of miserliness, it gets rid of stinginess, etc. So that's why this is one outcome and one benefit of zakat. And obviously the main thing is it promotes the circulation of wealth amongst the poor and those people that are poverty stricken. How many times do salat and zakat appear together in the Quran? Approximately 28 times they appear together. And obviously salat is something that we do on a daily basis 5 times a day. So that explains the importance, like I mentioned at the start. And it's something that has been ordered by Allah. So we shouldn't be blanking Allah. We should be listening to His commandments. Now, who must pay zakat? A Muslim must pay zakat. An adult, so a person that's reached the age of puberty, he must or she must pay zakat. So zakat is not compulsory upon a minor, a person that's not reached the age of puberty. A person of sound mind and state, so a person that's insane, so if we've got any insane family members, then zakat is not compulsory upon them. Other schools of thought do have various opinions, but inshallah the opinion that we're following is that it's not compulsory upon the sound mind, it's only compulsory upon the sound-minded and those that are sane. Now, in complete ownership of nisab, zakat is only compulsory upon you if you are an owner of nisab. Now, what is nisab? Nisab is the amount of wealth, the threshold that makes zakat compulsory upon you, and we'll go more in detail regarding that. So before we answer this question, nisab basically is the threshold, and the nisab will be different on different things. So we have to understand there's 5 things. There's cash, there's gold and silver, there's business items, and there's livestock. So there's 4 things if we take out so there's cash, gold and silver, business items, and livestock. These things zakat is compulsory upon if they reach the nisab amount. Now we'll go more in detail, but the first question is, when is your wedding anniversary? Everyone know their wedding anniversary over here? Most brothers look like they're married. Does everyone know their wedding anniversary? Yes? No? Maybe? Or it's you've got it recorded in your diary? Does everyone know it? Yes? Seems like majority of the brothers do know it. Some are staying quiet, which shows that they don't want to mention. Okay, anyway, so majority of the brothers know their date of wedding anniversary. And another question is, how often does your wedding anniversary come? Once a year. Yes, once a year. A majority of the brothers over here, and I'm assuming the sisters over there, they probably know their date, the wedding anniversary date. So if we can remember our wedding anniversary date, which only comes once a year, or once every year, then same with zakat. Zakat only comes once a year, meaning it's only compulsory once every lunar year. We only have to pay once. So it's not like salah where we have to pay every day or we have to pay every month. It's only once a year. Once every lunar year, we have to pay zakat. So if we can keep in mind the date of our wedding anniversary, then we have to keep in mind the date of our zakat anniversary as well. So what date do we pay zakat? So the year starts, the zakat year starts once a person becomes the owner of nisab. So once a person becomes the owner of nisab, the zakat year starts. And we'll go in more in detail, but I'll just mention it now. So basically, if a person has in cash equivalent to £214, then his zakat year will start from the day that he is owner of that amount of money. So that's when in cash. Now in gold and silver, when a person in gold is owner of the threshold, the nisab of gold, and in silver when a person is owner of the threshold of silver. And with regards to business related items, you'll equate that the value of that equivalent to the market value, and if that is more than £214 or £240 or more, then that's when your zakat year will start. And with regards to livestock, livestock is animals, etc. So you've got goat, sheep, etc., cows. So there's certain amount of cows, sheep and goats, if you have them, and there's certain conditions. We won't go in detail with regards to livestock and animals, because I doubt there's any farmers here, so we won't go into detail. But if you have any questions regarding animals, if zakat is compulsory upon them, or you've got animals back home, then inshallah you could refer back to our team, the National Zakat Foundation. You can contact them, and our scholars will inshallah answer your questions. So we were talking about the year. So the year starts once a person is owner of the nisab amount. So in cash it's £214. Now, calculation of the essentials. Zakat is not only paid on wealth that you have saved or kept for a full Islamic year. So many of us, we are of the misunderstanding, or we have a misunderstanding, that zakat is only compulsory upon our savings. But that is not the case. It's after a whole year. So once you become owner of the nisab, once you become owner of £214, so that's when your year starts. After that, at the end of, so say it was the 1st of Ramadan when you were the owner of that, the next year on the 1st of Ramadan, if you're owner of nisab or more, then you'll be paying 2.5% of that, no matter what your savings are. So it's after a year you'll calculate that. But we'll go more in detail inshallah in the coming slides. And remember, zakat is an individual obligation. Zakat is an individual obligation. So it's not a communal obligation where it's compulsory together on our whole family. It's individually, and it depends on each and every case. Nisab is the threshold minimum for zakatable assets at which zakat becomes due. So with regards to gold, so I was saying, remember these things. There's cash, gold and silver, business items and livestock. Remember these things, yeah? These are the things that zakat is compulsory upon. So with regards to cash, I mentioned the nisab, which is, anyone? £214. And remember, this fluctuates, so you can ask the scholars just to make sure when you're paying zakat, just to make sure to see if you have to pay or not. But at the moment, it's approximately £214. With regards to gold, if a person...
How you calculate £214?
Sorry, what was that?
How are you calculating £214? In what basis?
How can you collect?
How you calculated £214?
204, how did we calculate that?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, we won't go into too much detail, but I'll answer your question in short. The brother is asking, how did we get to the equation £214 that zakat is compulsory? So in the Prophet's time, remember they only had gold and silver, right? And remember in the hadith, there's mention that zakat is compulsory on when its gold is 20 mithqal of gold, like mentioned here. And when it comes to silver, there's mention of 200 dirhams of silver. So zakat is compulsory on 200 dirhams of silver, and when it comes to mithqal, 20 mithqal of gold, zakat is compulsory. So this is in hadith. So in the Prophet's time, there was only gold and silver. And remember, they used to trade, the currency they had was dirhams and dinars. Dinar was gold, dirham was silver. So even after those times, the trade was in gold and silver. So for example, if I wanted to buy a bag of rice, what would happen in those times and after? I would say, for example, have gold coins. So someone's selling a bag of rice for 5 gold coins. Just say, for example, just to make it simple, 5 gold coins. I'm selling this is a bag of rice for 5 gold coins. Now, if I've got 5 gold coins, I will pay him and he will give me the bag of rice. Likewise with silver, if someone's selling, for example, you could say wheat or barley, saying in 10 silver coins, pay me 10 silver coins, then I will give you this much. I will give you this much wheat and barley. So the trade in that time, it was common with gold and silver. So they used to trade in gold and silver. But what happened later on, it was really hard because gold and silver, it can become really weighty. And it's hard for a person to carry this around with him. And even at home, etc., it's hard for him to store so much amount of gold and silver. So slowly, what they did was they introduced different currencies. So for example, in our times, they've got the notes and the different coins. So what they said was that, for example, a £5 note is equivalent to 5 gold coins. This is just for simplicity's sake, I'm giving these examples. So what the government fixed was that if you want to buy something, you could also buy it for £5 note. But to gain those notes and those coins that are apparent now, you have to trade in the 5 gold coins you've got for the £5 note that you've got, and we'll look after your gold. So you go to the bank, you give your 5 gold coins, and they will give you £5 note. And that £5 note, it signifies and it denotes that the bank has got saved for you 5 gold coins. So this is what the pound note or the coins is equivalent to. Now, if you want to buy something, you could buy it with the pounds as well, the notes and the coins that the different governments have made apparent, and they've made it going around, etc. However, you can also buy it. But slowly, what happened was they said that now it's becoming. Now, if you want to get the gold coins back and the silver coins, all you have to do is give the £5 note back to them, and they give you the gold or they give you the silver back. But slowly, the notes and the coins, etc., they became so common and so apparent that people just kept trading in those, because it's more easier to keep the notes and the coins with you rather than the gold and the silver, and trading with gold and silver, rather than taking so much weighty gold with you around to shops and buying stuff in lieu of the gold or in lieu of the silver. It's hard, isn't it? So then the government, they gave these notes intrinsic value. So once the government started giving intrinsic value to the notes and the coins, etc., then the scholars, they fixed that from now on, zakat will be compulsory on cash as well, on notes, in coins, etc., because it's something of intrinsic value. It's something that the government, etc., various governments have given intrinsic value to. Hence, we will make zakat compulsory on this as well. Now the question was, zakat initially was compulsory on gold and silver from the Prophet ﷺ in hadith. So if you've got 20 mithqal of gold, then zakat is compulsory. If you've got 200 dirhams of silver, zakat is compulsory. Now, what is the value of that in cash? So the value of gold in cash, for example, the nisab value I'm talking about, that zakat is compulsory upon. So 87.48 grams is approximately, this fluctuates as well, it's about £1,000. Now when it comes to silver, the value of the nisab of the 200 dirhams of silver, which is equivalent to 612.36 grams, the value of that is £214 currently, approximately. In this slide we've mentioned £210, so like I was saying, it fluctuates up and down, so it's £214. So now with regards to, if we look at the maqasid of Sharia, the objectives of Sharia, one of the fundamental objective of giving zakat is to benefit the poor. Now obviously, if we were to make zakat compulsory upon cash, if we go according to the gold nisab, which is approximately £1,000, and it could go up to 2,500, it fluctuates, then there will be less benefit for the poor with regards to, or as opposed to, if we make zakat compulsory upon £210. Now we do have scholars that say that because in hadith there's mention of gold, they go according to the gold nisab, but a lot of the scholars, they go according to the silver nisab because it's less and it's more beneficial for the poor. So that's how they came to the equation that on the cash, it's equivalent to £214 approximately in silver. So that's why we'll make zakat compulsory upon silver. I hope that answers your question, inshallah. So that was just in short.
But the prices of gold is changing every day.
Yeah.
So it should be calculated by gold and transferred to money rather than other way around.
Repeat the question, brother.
I think the prices of gold and silver changing in daily basis.
Yes.
Or sometimes in hours. So you're calculating the zakat with money, and you can fix it. I think this is something which we.
No, like I said, on the day that you're going to be giving zakat, right? The day that zakat becomes due upon you,
Yeah.
on that day,
Yeah.
you will contact the jewelers, for example. Then you'll ask them the rate, and on top of that, you'll also contact the scholars. And obviously, like I said, it fluctuates, and you're correct, it just fluctuates. So on that day that you're going to be giving zakat, you'll contact them, and they will tell you. The scholars will say you, at the moment, currently this is the rate, so you give it equivalent to according to this. So, like I said, it fluctuates, yes. So, on the day that you're giving zakat, that's what you'll calculate it according to that day. And normally, when you give it to, for example, the National Zakat Foundation, you'll give them zakat, they'll tell you, so you can ask them, or any other organization that you give to. Inshallah, so we keep the questions to the end, inshallah, to save time. So, whatever questions you have, inshallah, keep them in mind or just write them down, and inshallah, we'll answer them at the end. So did everyone understand with regards to gold and silver and cash? Did everyone understand? Yes? Did that make sense? So now with regards to the year. With regards to the year, when I mentioned at the start, your lunar year, you go according to the lunar year, yeah? So according to the Islamic months, Muharram, Safar, Rabiul Awwal, etc. You go according to that. You don't go according to the solar year. You don't go according to January, February, March, etc. Now when does your year start? Anyone answer the question? When does the year start? When does the zakat year start? When does your zakat year start? When does it start? When you are owner of nisab. So as soon as you're owner of the nisab amount, that's when your zakat year starts. So here we mentioned, on this slide we've got, on this slide, can everyone see this slide? Yes? So here, look, this is the nisab amount. Can you see this line? This is the nisab, right? £214, we've written it here. So the nisab for this year, so we've got Jumadul Awal and we've got Jumadul Thani. So this is when a person has become owner of nisab. This is just an example for everyone to understand. So here, the zakat year will start on Jumadul Thani, of this person who's the owner of nisab on Jumadul Thani. Now, no matter what happens during the year, no matter if it goes increases and decreases, so everyone's looking at the side, it doesn't matter if it increases and decreases. When at the coming year, when it comes Jumad Thani again, if a person is owner of nisab or more, so he'll calculate whatever he has on that date. So say it was the first of Jumad Thani, whatever he has on that date, if it's nisab or more, he will be paying 2.5% of that into zakat. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter if it increases and decreases during the year. So over here in this slide, we've got it increases and decreases above the nisab amount. So that doesn't matter. Now if you go to the next slide, over here, what's happening is, the start of the year is when? So this is Jumadul Awal. This first one is Jumadul Awal. This is Jumadul Thani. So can someone answer please, when will his zakat year start? This example, when will the zakat year start? Anyone that could see the slide? When is the zakat year starting? What Islamic month? Yeah, Jumadul Thani, correct. Why? Yeah, because it's above the nisab on Jumadul Thani. On Jumadul Awal, it was below nisab, isn't it? So his zakat year will start on Jumadul Thani. So that's when his start of the year, the zakat year, that's when it's starting. Now what happens is, when it comes, it's the year's coming to an end, right? So it's Jumadul Awal, Jumadul Thani. So say on Jumadul Thani, it stays at this, right? It stays at this rate. Now the question is, will he have to pay zakat? Yes or no? Yes or no? No. Why? Yes, because it's below the nisab when the year elapses. When the year comes to an end, it's below the nisab. So now he will not have to pay zakat. Why? Because remember, you only pay zakat once from the start of the year and the end of the year. Yeah, you be owner of nisab amount. So that nisab could be in silver, in gold, or in cash. In cash is £214. In gold, like we mentioned before, is 87.48 grams of gold, or the value of that in cash. Or when it comes to silver, it's 612.36 grams approximately of silver, if he's got the value of that. And remember, if you've got a combination of gold, silver and cash, or business items, business related items, and we'll go into detail with what is what do we classify as a business item? We'll go into detail in later slides. So if you've got a combination of these things, then you'll combine the value of that all together, and then you'll see at the end of the year what is the nisab amount, and you'll pay inshallah with regards to zakat. Now in the next slide we've got, in this example what happens is, a person, he's owner of the nisab on Jumadul Awwal. Does that make sense? So on the first month, well, on Jumadul Awwal in this example, he's owner of nisab. He's owner of nisab all the way until Ramadan and until Shawwal. Remember, has the year come to an end yet? No, it's not come to an end. We're still approximately midway through. However, in Muharram, Safar, in these months, his nisab drops, so he's got below nisab. However, when the year elapses, when it reaches Jumadul Awwal again, he's got above nisab. So the question is, does he have to pay zakat? Yes or no? Yes. Why? Yes. So basically, you calculate the start of the year and the end of the year. No matter what happens in between the year, whether the nisab amount that you've got, it drops, it doesn't matter. So basically, you don't need to worry about middle of the year. You just fix a date when your nisab amount, when you have got the nisab amount, and you keep that in mind. And no matter what happens during the year, then the next year, on that same date, you see, have you got nisab amount? If you do, then yes, you pay zakat. If no, then you don't have to pay. But now the question is, if you don't own the nisab amount at the end of the year, so the end of the year you don't own the nisab amount, the question is, when will your zakat year start again? Anyone? When you reach nisab again, that's when your zakat year will start again. That's correct. Okay, so does that make sense up to here, everyone? Okay, that makes sense. Next, zakat calculation in 3 steps. It's easy to calculate your zakat if you follow these steps. Sum up the value of all zakatable assets. So you sum up everything, all the zakatable assets that you've got. Calculate the value of all deductible debts and all liabilities. Because we've mentioned debts here, I'll mention about debts. Remember, if a person, he's in debt, then he won't have to pay zakat if he deducts the debts that he's got, and if that is, or his liabilities, if that is equivalent to the amount that he's got. So I'll give you an example to make sense. So for example, a person, he's got £1,000. This is just an example. He's got £1,000, right? That stays with him for a whole year. So on the 1st of Ramadan, I had £1,000 in cash. A whole year elapses. On the 1st of Ramadan again, I check how much money have I got. I've got £1,000. Is that above nisab? Yes or no? Is that above nisab? Yes, it is. So will zakat be compulsory upon me? Yes. So I'll have to pay 2.5% of that £1,000 on the 1st of Ramadan. However, so that was just an example. Now let's take another example. Same example, I've got £1,000. It stays with me for a whole year. However, I owe someone £900. I owe someone £900. I borrowed it from, so I owe him. So £1,000 minus £900 leaves me with £100. Will I have to pay zakat? No. Why? Because I am below the nisab. Yeah, I am below the nisab. Because I owe someone money. So what happens is, whatever debt you owe to whoever, or whatever are your liabilities, you deduct that from the net amount that you've got. However, remember, if a person, for example, he's got a house on mortgage, right? And this doesn't mean I'm saying mortgages are halal. This is just an example. If a person's got a house on mortgage, so why does a person buy a house on mortgage? Because he doesn't have money. So for example, a house costs £90,000. He doesn't have £90,000. So he contacts the bank and says that, will you buy the house for me, etc., and I'll pay you. So the bank says, okay, you have to pay on a monthly basis for the next 25 years, £100,000, for example. So obviously the bank's going to get benefit of £10,000. So you're going to be paying £100,000, or let's just say £110,000. So now for the next 25 years, you are in debt of how much? £100,000 or £110,000, you're in debt. So now if a person that's, you can just say, is a middle class person, he's going to be in debt for £110,000 for the next 25 years. Do you think zakat will ever be compulsory upon him? Just a middle class person. It's very unlikely, isn't it? It's very unlikely. So for this purpose, what the scholars have said, because remember the objective, one of the fundamental objectives of paying zakat is what? Is to benefit the poor. So the scholars have mentioned that we will only deduct the coming 12 months amount of debt that a person's got. He will not calculate the debt of his whole life for the next 25 years. He'll only calculate the debt of the coming year 12 months worth of debt. So if a person's got a house on mortgage, he will only, for example, be paying £500 a month. This is just an example, £500 a month. So yearly that will be equivalent to £6,000. So he'll only deduct that from his nisab or his cash, gold, silver, etc. He'll only deduct that from his nisab. Do you understand? So when he deducts that, whatever he's left with, he will pay the zakat of that. Does that make sense to everyone? So only the 12 months. Now with regards to zakat, remember, because interest payments as well, there's no zakat on unlawful money. There's no zakat on unlawful money that you've got. So if you receive interest, there's no zakat on that because that's unlawful. With regards to unlawful money, you have to give it in charity without the intention of reward. It has to be given to charity without the intention of reward. Remember that. There's no zakat on unlawful money because it's unlawful. Right? So keep these things in mind, inshallah, with regards to the debt. Okay. Now, what are zakatable assets? So I mentioned the zakatable assets. We're going to go into detail and they're going to mention it in the following slides. But can someone mention them again? The zakatable assets that I mentioned. So what is zakat compulsory upon? Anyone? What are the items that zakat is compulsory upon? Gold, silver, cash. What else? Livestock and business items, merchandise, etc. So this is all we're mentioning. So zakat is compulsory on cash and liquid assets like we mentioned. So all cash is fully subject to zakat. There's no zakat on interest because 100% must be given away. One may own cash within certain investments, including that includes that as well, inshallah. Now, gold and silver, we mentioned the zakat compulsory upon that. And in gold is equivalent to how much grams of gold is zakat compulsory upon. In hadith is 20 mithqal of gold and silver is 200 dirhams. So what in grams can anyone mention? We mentioned it at the start. In gold, how much grams
87.
is the nisab? Yes, 87 grams. Now with regards to silver, what is the nisab? 612 grams of silver. So that's the nisab amount of silver. Yeah. So you'll calculate the value of that in cash, or you can give the silver amount in zakat as well. Now remember, if you've got mixed metal, so for example, if you've got some items that there's a mixture of metal and gold, then if there's majority gold, then obviously that will be classified as a gold item. Likewise in silver. There's no zakat on diamonds, etc., and other type of metal or stones that you've got. However, if it's to do with business, if it's for business purposes, then zakat will be compulsory because it's a business-related item. Now, what is a business-related item? We'll mention that. So what are business assets? Business assets are those things that are purchased with the intention that you are going to sell. So when you buy something with the intention of selling, then that will be classified as a business item. So even if you're doing a private business, for example, with the cars, so you're buying cars, you may have not registered the business. However, you keep the cars parked at your house, 3, 4, 5 cars, whatever, and you buy them with the intention of selling. So that will be classified as a business item, right? So that will be classified as a business asset. And when the zakat year comes to an end, when you're calculating your zakat, you will have to take into consideration the value of that as well, and you will have to pay zakat of that. Does that make sense? Because of it being a business item. So it all comes down to intention with regards to business items. So when you're buying it with the intention of selling it, that's when it's a business item. If your intentions are mixed at the time of buying, so for example, one brother was asking a question that I bought a car. Now my intention was I'm going to use it for personal use. However, if a good offer comes, then I'm going to sell it. So now will that be classified as a business item? Yes or no? Yes. Anyone?
Yes.
No.
Some brothers are saying yes, some brothers are saying no. So we've got a difference of opinion. Difference of opinion. Okay, the answer to that is he will not have to pay zakat. Why? Because when he bought it, he has to have an exclusive intention that he's going to sell it. It can't be a mixed intention of buying and selling. He's not sure. It has to be that, no, 100% that you are intending to sell it. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Only then will it be a business related item. Okay, now we're going to property and fixed assets. Many of us, we've got houses. We own many houses, 2-3 houses. So will zakat be compulsory upon those 2-3 houses? What do brothers say?
Yes. If you make it as a business, yes.
It's not a business.
Because you only you're going to live in only one house. What about the other two?
If you bought it with the
Any other
intention of
answers?
selling it, if you bought it with the intention of selling it, then you have to pay zakat. If you bought it with the intention of renting it, or some other purpose, you say you won't have to pay zakat.
If you are renting them, so
That's correct. That's correct. So basically what it is in houses, what you have to understand is, remember zakat is only compulsory upon the things that we mentioned at the start. Cash, gold, silver, business items, or livestock. So does a house fall under these things that we've mentioned? Does the house fall under these things that we mentioned? No. So on a house will zakat be compulsory? No. However, if a person's bought a house with the intention, like brother was saying, for business purposes, so he's got a business of buying and selling houses, then yes, because his intention is business, right? So he's bought the houses with the intention of selling them. So because of that, he'll have to pay zakat. However, if a person, he's got 3-4 houses. So I've got one house and I live in the house. However, I've got 2-3 other houses as well and I've rented them. Will zakat be compulsory upon those houses? No, because they do not fall under the things that we mentioned. They do not fall under cash, gold, silver, business, or livestock. They do not fall under these categories. So there will be no zakat on these, and I have not intended to use these houses for business purposes where I'm buying them and selling them. However, I'm renting those 3-4 houses. So the cash that I receive from the rent, I will pay zakat on that. Obviously, that will be taken into consideration when my year comes to an end, and when I'm paying zakat, whatever cash I've got, I will be paying zakat on that cash anyway because it's under those 4 categories. Does that make sense?
But
Does that make sense?
if the rental value is above the nisab, so then you have to pay the zakat on that.
What it is basically, normally people when they rent houses, then they receive the rental on a monthly basis, for example. So you don't need to even worry about zakat during the year. Does that make sense? You don't have, because you're not paying zakat on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis. So you don't have to worry about anything during the year. All you have to worry about is you have become owner of nisab, for example, on the 1st of Ramadan. So that's it now. Keep that date in mind. Now when the next year, 1st of Ramadan comes again, what have you got in cash? So that includes all the rent that you've got at that current time. Does that make sense? So you don't have to worry about during the year. It's just on that date when the year comes to an end, your zakat year comes to an end. You just have to worry about that date. Whatever you've got zakatable assets, you'll be paying zakat on that. That's it. So there's no question of during the year, etc. Do you understand? Okay. So have we still got time? Yes? We've still got enough time? Okay. Now, with regards to shares, etc., many brothers and sisters, they deal with shares. Now, what is shares? All shares is basically, there's a company, or someone wants to set up a company. They do not have enough money. So what they say is that, so for example, I want to set up a company. I do not have enough money. So I contact the public, or I publicize that I am giving shares. I'm going to buy such and such company, for example, but I do not have the money. So if a person wants to buy, so for example, there's 10 people that could buy the company. For simplicity's sake, I'll make it easy. Just say it's worth £100, just for example. So if you want to buy a share in the company, you pay £10, and I will give you a certificate to prove that you are owner 10% in the company. Does that make sense? So you have invested how much? £10 in the company. So there's 10 people that have invested in that company. Now I'm doing various activities with that company. I could be dealing with other investment companies. I could be buying cars and stuff, whatever the the business is for the person that's running the company. But obviously those people that have invested into the company and that have bought shares, they have to know obviously. Now will zakat be compulsory upon that? So that's the question. So the answer to this is, if shares are purchased with the intention to resell, so you bought the share in a company with the intention to sell, then that will come under the category of the business items that we mentioned at the start. So yes, you'll have to pay zakat on that, right? Then the entire holding is subject to zakat at the current market value. So when the zakat year comes to an end, whatever the market value of the share is, you will be including that in your zakatable assets. Does that make sense? If shares are purchased as a long-term investment, then zakat is due on the zakatable assets of the company. So if you bought a share, not with the intention of reselling it later on, it's just to gain dividends, etc., then zakat will only be compulsory upon the zakatable assets of the company. So whatever company that you have invested in and bought shares, you have to find out the balance sheets, etc., of that company, and whatever business items they've got, you'll have to pay zakat on that, right? But only equivalent to your share, right? Not on the whole company. It's only including or equivalent to the investment that you've invested into the company. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, pension schemes. Mashallah, majority of the people that are present here look very young. Doesn't seem like there's any pensioners, so we don't need to go in much detail. However, just in short, all pension that you receive once you become a pensioner, all the pension that you receive after you reach the age of pension, then obviously that's cash normally. So you receive that cash, and obviously does the cash fall under the categories that we mentioned at the start? Yes, it does, right? So obviously you'll have to pay zakat of that because you become owner of that, right? So you'll have to be paying zakat of that obviously after a year when your zakat year elapses, etc. Now when you're working, etc., what happens is there's different type of contributions. So when a person's working, the company that he's working for or whoever is working for, they normally take a cut and they'll say, oh, this is your pension contribution that you'll be gaining back, etc. at the end. So now during that time, will that be included in zakat? So we've got some different schemes. There's the national insurance contributions. There's no zakat on that. Then we've got the final salary scheme. There's no zakat on that as well. Why? Because there is no quantifiable or specific amount of wealth attributed to the individual. So basically you have no say in that, and there's no quantifiable mention of the specific amount. So because of that, there's no zakat due on these. Now there's other schemes as well. If you've got any questions with regards to other schemes that you may be facing, inshallah, you could ask the questions at the end, or you could contact our scholars, inshallah, and we'll be willing to answer your questions. Now, with regards to debt, money owed to you. So remember at the start when I give an example, you'll only deduct that debt that you owe to someone else. That's what we were talking about, if you recall. But now the question is, what if someone else owes you money? Will you calculate that into zakat or not? Right? So for example, I've got £1,000. It stays with me for a whole year. Now, time has come for me to pay zakat, and I've got more than nisab, so I'll be paying zakat. However, I borrowed someone, I lent £500 to someone else. So now when I'm calculating my zakat, will I include that whilst giving zakat or not? So that's the question. So what we're mentioning here is loans advanced with hope of repayment, then zakat will be applicable and compulsory upon that. Does that make sense? Likewise, receivables from the sale of commercial goods, zakat is compulsory upon that as well. However, you only have to pay zakat on that money once you receive it. Does that make sense? And they mention it's 1/5, etc. So for example, the example I give was, I had £1,000, it stayed with me for a whole year. Someone else owes me £500. However, when my zakat anniversary came and I have to pay zakat, I've only got £1,000. A brother owes me £500. I've still not got it. So will zakat be compulsory upon me at that time? No, because I've still not received it. However, it's best to pay it. Why? Because you will have to make sure that you take into consideration that you have to pay zakat of that during that year, even though you only have to pay it once you receive it. So rather than, for example, he doesn't pay you for another 5 years and you calculating the amount of that for another 5 years, it's best just to pay it and get it over and done with, rather than calculating it when you receive it, just say after another 5 years. Does that make sense? So it's best to get it over and done with and just pay it, rather than delaying it until you receive it. Now we've got receivables. So those things that someone owes to you that are not zakatable for outstanding years. Loans advanced without any hope of repayment. So you borrow someone else money, but you've got no hope that he's going to give it you back. So then you don't have to pay zakat on that, right? Because you're not 100% that he's going to pay it you back.
Is it vice versa? Suppose you owe somebody and that person says, well, it's like the amana with you. When I need it, you give it to me. I don't need it now. Suppose, for example. So will you pay that amount of zakat? You will be liable of that zakat.
Repeat that again, please.
Suppose if I have to pay somebody £100.
You have to pay them because they lent it to you.
Yes, I owe him £100. And I'm saying him, take this money. He said, no, I don't need it. When I need it, I will ask you. So it is with me. So shall I have to pay when I calculate at the end of the year?
You don't have to pay because you owe him.
Yes.
So you'll be deducting that from your zakatable assets because you owe someone else.
This is staying with me.
The question will be about him, whether he has to pay or not, because that's his money that you are borrowing. So you don't have to worry about paying zakat on that, because that's debt that you have to give to someone else. So it's about him paying money, zakat on that or not. So the answer to that, yes, he has to pay, but it'll only be compulsory upon him once he receives it. Yeah, so that's it. Right now, with regards to wages, fees, remuneration of services, etc., then you do not have to pay zakat. So for example, my year came to an end to pay zakat. However, I get my wage monthly. So on the 1st of Ramadan, I'm calculating whether I have to pay zakat. So I do have to pay zakat because I got £1,000. So same example that we've been going on about during the whole workshop. However, the company that I work for, they pay me monthly, but they pay me at the end of the month. So in Ramadan, for example, they're going to pay me on the last day of Ramadan £500. So I'm paying zakat on the 1st of Ramadan because that's my zakat anniversary. So will I include that £500 in my zakat? Yes or no? Yes or no? Because that's wages that is owed to me. So do I have to pay zakat on that? No, because I do not have it with me at that time. It's not in my possession. I've not been given that. So that does not, you will not calculate that into your zakat. Likewise, you've got the mahr, the dower owed to wife as well. So, a wife, for example, is the same case. Inheritance shares, same case as well. So, for example, a family member passed away. He left a large sum of money, but it's still not been distributed. You've still not received it. You're a direct inheritor. Now, the zakat anniversary of yours has come. Now, do you have to pay zakat on that, yes or no? No, until you don't receive it physically in your ownership. Yes?
So when you do receive it, you still have to pay for all the years?
No, when you receive it, no. You don't have to pay for all of the years, no. It's not calculated, or it's not considered, a strong debt, like we mentioned at this, with regards to the other debts. Now, there's no farmers here. Any farmers? No, I doubt it. So, inshallah, if you've got any questions with regards to livestock, then you could ask questions, you could contact directly, you could contact the organization, and we'll hopefully be willing to answer your questions. Now, with regards to deductible liabilities, I mentioned this at the start, the debt that you owe, and it's only for the 12 months worth of debt. It's not for the 20 years, 25 years, etc. Because obviously the fundamental objective of zakat is to benefit the poor. So that's why the scholars have fixed 12 months of deductible liabilities, etc. Right? So we won't go into detail with regards to this type of debt. Now, the final calculation. So those eligible to receive zakat. So we've done who has to pay zakat, but now the question is who's eligible to receive zakat, right? So we did the aspect of who has to pay zakat. So can anyone in short just mention who has to pay zakat? Anyone in short? Whoever has nisab in relation to gold, silver, cash, business items or livestock, whoever has nisab for these related items or these things, then he'll have to pay zakat. And obviously you have to take into consideration you've got no debt and all that as well. And you have to be Muslim, you have to be sane, you have to be a person of the age of puberty, etc. Now, who can receive zakat? So, with regards to zakat, who can receive zakat? Obviously, it has to be a Muslim. It cannot be from the family of Banu Hashim, like we mentioned at the start. It can't be a descendant of the Prophet ﷺ from Fatima radiallahu anha. It cannot be spent on mosques, schools, hospitals, burial expenses. Remember that. We touched upon this at the start. If you've got any questions, you can ask, inshallah. But it has to be given in the physical ownership of a person, etc. And it cannot be given as wages or remuneration for any work. So, for example, someone is painting this room for you, and you own this building. You know he's worthy of receiving zakat, but he's doing a job for you. You're paying your zakat. You cannot pay zakat for his wages or for his services that he's rendering. You cannot pay zakat for that. Yeah, it has to be voluntarily, without any attachment, worldly gain, worldly attachment. Yeah. Now, other than that, in short, that person who does not have the nisab amount, excluding his items of necessity, he's eligible to receive zakat. Does that make sense? So, for example, a person, he does not have nisab amount of gold, silver, cash, livestock, business items. So he does not have nisab amount of that, right? Now his necessary items, all the other items that he's got, excluding his necessary items, items of necessity, he's not got equivalent to nisab. So for example, I own a house, I've got a house. In my house, I've got items of necessity such as furniture, microwave, fridge, I've got a mobile phone, etc. All these are items of necessity. However, I've got items above items of necessity as well. So for example, I've got 3-4 phones, I've got 2-3 cars. So one car is, you could say, it's an item of necessity. 2-3 cars are not items of necessity. You're only in need of one car. You don't need 2-3 cars. So I've got items in excess of my necessity. So these 2 cars, so I've got 2 cars. One car is an item of necessity, but another car is not an item of necessity. So that car is outside my items of necessity. I've got 3 phones. One phone is item of necessity. The other 2-3 phones are not items of necessity. Now the value of that car is £500, for example. That car that is not of my item of necessity. Then I've got phones. So this, just say that equates to £300-400 as well. So that items outside or excessive of my items of necessity, what is the value of the items that I've got? What is the value of the items that I've got? Anyone? About £800, isn't it? So my car, the excessive car is £500. The 3-4 phones I've got, just say they're about £300-400. So that is equivalent to £800. So now outside my items of necessity, have I got equivalent to nisab? It's above the nisab. So now, am I worthy of receiving zakat? Can I receive zakat? Am I eligible to receive zakat? No. Why? Because outside my items of necessity, I've got nisab or more than nisab. So therefore, I cannot receive zakat. Does that make sense? Another example. Same example. I've got a house. I've got a car. In my house, I've only got all items of necessity. Outside my items of necessity, I also have £100. I've got nothing else. Can I receive zakat? Yes or no? Yes. Why? Because I've got the money I've got is below nisab, and I've got no other items, the value of which are equivalent to nisab or more than nisab, that are items or outside my items of necessity. Does that make sense? So a person, he could be a person that has to pay zakat. Remember, he will not be eligible to receive zakat at all. Yeah, a person that has to pay zakat, he will not be eligible to receive zakat because he's got the nisab amount. So that's one type of person. Then we've got another type of person that he does not have to pay zakat, but he can also not receive zakat as well. An example of that is a person like the example that I give. So for example, I've not got the nisab amount of gold, silver, cash, business items of livestock. I've not got nisab amount of that, However, I've got 3-4 cars that are outside my items of necessity, and the value of those cars are, for example, £1,000. So because of that, can I receive zakat? No. Because above my items of necessity, I have got items that are equivalent to nisab or more than nisab, so because of that I cannot receive zakat. But I also do not have to pay zakat because I do not have the nisab amount of wealth on the categories that we mentioned: gold, silver, cash, livestock, business items. So that's the second type of person. So the first type of person I mentioned was a person that has to pay zakat. Because of that, obviously can't receive zakat. The second type of person I mentioned was a person that cannot receive zakat, but he also does not have to pay. Now the third type of person is a person that he can receive zakat and obviously does not have to pay zakat. Does that make sense? So these got these 3 type of people. And the third type of person, the example that we mentioned at the start, is that person that above his items of necessity, he's not got any items, the value of which that is equivalent to nisab or above nisab, and also the items that zakat is compulsory upon, he's not got the nisab equivalent to that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Brother, can I ask you one thing? Now, if someone is not working or is not getting any remuneration, but he got some zakat and his nisab went up with the zakat he has received, and that stayed for him with him for a couple of years, can we give him more zakat?
Can you repeat that, please?
Someone is not working or is not eligible to work, whatever, he's not getting any monthly payments, but he received some zakat on an annual basis, and his nisab went up. He has those possessions with him for a couple of years, but he's still not earning. Can you still pay him zakat?
No. If he's got the nisab amount on him, then he cannot receive zakat. So you're saying your question is in cash. So he's got cash, for example, say he's got £300, right? So he's received that from zakat money, £300-400, and you're saying that stays with him for about 3-4 years. Then no, he cannot receive zakat because he's got the nisab amount on him of cash. So he'll actually have to pay zakat. If he's got £300-400, he's got no other debt, etc. Doesn't matter if he's working, and that stays with him for a whole year, then he'll have to pay zakat because that's above the nisab amount. Does that make sense?
One more quick question. You mentioned that zakat cannot be paid to Muslims, but in the time of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, zakat was paid to non-Muslims on the principle of wonderful qulub, to
Okay.
their hearts.
Okay, we'll touch upon that. We'll just finish it off. There's only this slide left, I think. So we'll just finish this off and then I'll answer all questions, inshallah. So basically, if you missed zakat for previous years, then what you have to do is you have to roughly estimate to the best of your ability, whatever you can remember, you will roughly estimate in your mind and you write it down and you calculate the previous year's missed zakat, and inshallah you pay zakat for that. And you could also visit this website, misszakat.com, and that will help you. And with regards to giving zakat, where to give zakat, obviously it's best to give it to your local neighborhood, those people that are needy. But obviously you have to make sure you find out, are they worthy of receiving. You can't just give it to someone and then you find out later that he's not worthy of receiving zakat. If you give it to someone and then you find out that he's not worthy of receiving zakat, then your zakat will not be carried out and you will have to re-give the zakat again. Does that make sense? I remember many of us think that there's not worthy people in our own local neighborhood or in England, but there are so many needy people and there are so many homeless people, Muslims as well. If we, for example, contact this organization, they will give you more detail, they will give you case scenarios, and you will be shocked the amount of people that are eligible to receive zakat in this country as well. So we have to find out, are people worthy here, and we should give it to our own local people first. We can also give it abroad as well. There's your zakat will still be fulfilled. But remember, your local people, they should be given preference. And there's zakat resources as well. So if you want to learn, you could go on this website. You can calculate here as well and pay. And you can contact, inshallah, these websites. And if you have any questions, just write down this number. And there's a actual zakat hotline as well that scholars are sitting on a panel, and inshallah they're answering your questions on, I think it's from 11 a.m. to maybe 6 p.m. in Ramadan at the moment currently. So you can inshallah ask questions, whatever questions you have. Lastly, I'd just like to finish off by thanking all brothers and sisters for attending and sitting here patiently and calmly. May Allah the Almighty give us all the ability to act upon everything that has been said. May Allah the Almighty give us the ability to understand the importance of zakat And if zakat is compulsory upon us, may He, the Almighty, give us the ability to pay it. And inshallah, we finish off by the praise of Allah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. So inshallah, any questions, brothers? Brother asked the question. If you can just repeat the question, inshallah.
So the question was that in times of Prophet Muhammad, zakat was given to non-Muslims for mournful qulub,
Okay.
soften their hearts. Does that not apply anymore?
According to the Hanafi scholars, that's been abrogated. What happened was, in those times, they used to give it to mu'allafat qulub to reconcile the hearts. There were a few categories. So they would give it to new Muslims to elevate their spirituality. So this is the type of people they would give it to. So they were Muslims. They would give it to tyrant rulers where Muslims were living to safeguard the Muslims. So this was another category. And the third category, they would give it to directly to non-Muslims to attract them to Islam. So that was in those times when Islam was on a law, you could say. And, Islam was not in majority. So to attract more people, etc. But the Hanafi school of thought, the scholars, they say that has been abrogated and that's not applicable in this day and age. Does that make sense? Any more questions?
So you said about the hospital that you cannot give the zakat to the hospital.
Yes.
We nowadays, like back home, I'm talking about there are a lot of projects, and they are very noble cause they are doing back home in Pakistan, hospitals. So do you think that they are not eligible for zakat?
So with regards to hospitals and them being eligible or not, what it is if you give zakat money to the patient, the poor patient himself, and he buys medicine with that money, then that's permissible. Your zakat will be discharged. Or you give it to the hospital and you tell them, look, you could buy medicine with the zakat money. However, you have to make the person owner of the medicine. Then your zakat will be fulfilled. But what happens normally is you're giving your zakat to a hospital, etc. Now, they only give the patients medicine, tablets, equivalent to their need or according to their need. They don't give or make them owners of it. So you're not sure if they're making them full owners of the full zakat money that you give, and they buy the medicine with that and they give the full ownership to the patients of the full zakat money or the full zakat medicine, you could say, because you bought it with zakat money. So you're not sure. Unless you're 100% sure, it's best not to give it. You need to be on the safe side when it comes to zakat.
But these they have got the different category of account, which they clearly mention that you are doing a sadaqah, you are doing a zakat. It means they understand. They must have got opinion from different scholars.
Yeah, that's so. If you're sure, if you're content, and they make it clear that no, this is only being used for zakat purposes, then yes, you can give it. But just we were mentioning generally, without these conditions, etc., then no, you cannot. Yes? Yes, brother?
Back to a question you asked before. You're holding someone else's money. They don't want it back. And so you're going to continue holding it. And you said, so I'm not, or you're not liable to pay zakat on that. So who's paying zakat on that amount then?
It's the person that you owe. So, because it's not your money, it's a debt on you. You have to give it back. So he has to pay, not you.
Right. So say for example.
But obviously he won't have to pay it there and then. He'll only have to pay it once he receives it, but he'll have to take into consideration the previous years once he's not received it, etc. But obviously the question will be directed towards him and not you. You don't have to pay because it's not yours, it's a debt on you. Yeah?
So you're holding it for 2 years then?
Yeah, that doesn't matter how many years you're holding it for.
So is,
I'll just answer and then you inshallah.
is mortgage then a form of debt?
Yeah, that is a debt. That is a debt. But remember what we were mentioning is you're paying monthly. However, for example, you're paying £500 monthly, but you also pay interest, right? So you don't take into consideration interest because there's no zakat and unlawful money, etc. It's the £500 just of the debt. So that's what you're going to take into consideration.
And what happens with if you buy a property on installments? Let's suppose back home if you're buying something, let's suppose for 3 years in installments. What happens with that?
You're buying a property.
On installments, so monthly installments for 3 years.
You're paying.
I'm paying. Let's suppose I bought a property. What happens to that?
So until the question will be whether you're paying or whether you have to pay. So the question you're talking about is debts. So will that be classified as a debt?
I'm
So
talking about both questions, whether I'm in debt
Mhm.
and whether I have to pay zakat.
No, you're not in debt at the moment until you do not pay it, right? Right? It's only the 12 months worth, and because of that, with regards to receiving zakat,
But I'm paying it monthly though, isn't it? I'm paying the monthly installment to them.
that will be classified as it's just like a mortgage then. Basically, you are saying to them, the house costs £100,000, for example, but I'm going to be paying it within 2-3 years in installments.
Yeah.
So that means you owe them that money.
Yeah.
Yes? So that will be deducted from your nisab and the zakatable assets, just like a debt. However, it's only 12 months worth of amount that you're going to be deducting, not the whole 3-4 years.
So 12 months from the time I started paying them.
No, 12 months from the time that you are going to be paying zakat. Yeah, nisab amount.
Your nisab years 12 months basically. So you pay zakat on the first of Ramadan, it will set the next first of Ramadan.
Any more? You're asking a question, brother?
Yeah, like if you have bought a property which is not a house, just a open land, and with the intention that you may use it later on for your child's education or whatever, so would zakat be paid on that?
Does it fall under the categories that we mentioned at the start? Does it fall under cash, gold, silver, business items, or livestock?
It's just like a cash. You have the property,
Mm,
you can
no.
sell it anytime.
No, if you bought it with the intention of selling it for business purposes, then it will fall under business-related items. But for the purpose that you mentioned, because it doesn't fall under the categories that we mentioned, so you will not have to pay zakat on that.
Okay, so it's because it's not business intention, it's a child education. I think that's what the bottom line is, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what you can suggest.
And the other question is that you bought like 100 grams of gold, like a jewelry, but that was probably for £100 or £200. Now the value has gone up to £1,000, but if you sell it, because it's in the jewelry form, it will never be sold for £1,000. It will be less, maybe 600 or 700. So at what level should we?
Can you just repeat that again, please, just to make sure?
Bought jewelry,
Yeah.
suppose 100 grams of jewelry for £100, but now the value of the gold has increased to £1,000. But it's not in the form of a bar, it's a good jewelry. So if you resell it, the jeweler will buy for maybe £600, although the value is £1,000. So do you pay zakat on 1,000 or 600?
On the market value, at the time, on the day that you're paying zakat, whatever the market value of that is, you will be paying zakat on that. So it doesn't matter with regards to how much someone else is buying it for. So one jeweler is buying it for 600, another buying it for 500, for example. Whatever the market value is, the current market value of that, you'll be paying zakat on that amount.
It's still not clear.
You take the weight of the gold, not the actual item, the price of the item. Like I said, in a gram, you need the weight of the item.
Yes, because there is a fixed threshold that is accepted amongst all the jewelers with regards to the actual value in cash. So the value of that, yeah. So like you were saying, you take into consideration the weight, etc. So the jewelers will be able to give you a better idea of that, the value of that.
Alright, so the value you can sell that amount, that jewelry for, you will pay the on that.
Yes, the market value. Any more questions? That's it? Is that it? Do we have any questions from the sisters?
You can ask any question from the sister. Can we give the zakat after calculating that this is the amount? Can we give it in divided and the portion rather than just give once?
Say that again.
Let's suppose I have the zakat to pay £1,000.
Yeah.
Can I have to pay at once or can I pay spread it over 1 month or 2 months?
What it is, it's best to pay in one go, right? It's best to pay one go because you can never tell about life or death. You could, I could die next minute and I've left it in installments and no one else knows about it. So the compulsion is upon you straight away. So that's why it's best not to pay in installments. However, if you do pay in installments, there's nothing wrong with that. So for example, someone was asking this morning as well that I keep it to a side. The zakat amount that I have to pay, I keep it to a side. And when I see that there's a needy cause that comes about, then I give it to them like that. But then I said the downfall in that is, what if you die tomorrow and you've not informed someone? Then, you've not paid the zakat and you'll be held liable. So it's best to get it over and done with and pay straight away.
So can you plan in? Can you pay in advance?
You can pay in advance. However, that could lead to intricacies, and that is, for example, when the nisab date actually comes. Yes, then you'll have to say, I paid this much, or did I pay this much? Not. So as long as you're writing everything down, then when your zakat anniversary comes, then you can deduct that and say, okay, I paid in advance. So you can do that, yes.
Similar basically, can you pay in advance in monthly installment? Let's say, suppose you've got that amount of gold in the bank anyway, and you will pay
Yes.
monthly installment.
You can, but I normally advise not to because it could lead to misunderstandings in the future and intricacies.
Fluctuation in between the time
Yes,
of
yes.
that value. Sorry, one more question. Sorry, I have important question. You are calculating on a lunar month, is that right? Whereas, we normally, take like, this July, August, or September, like suppose, for example. So shall we always keep it like a lunar month?
Yes, you should keep it a lunar month, yes.
Because that is receiving every year.
It's what every year?
5-10 days goes back.
Yeah, 10 days approximately, it goes back. So that's why we should fix it to a lunar year, not a solar year.
What if we haven't? And how do we go back?
If you haven't, then basically you'll estimate roughly, like 10 days, because there's approximately about 10 days roughly more in a solar year compared to a lunar year. So you'll just say 10 days every month, every year for the previous years. You will basically calculate how many days that is equivalent to, and roughly you'll just pay according to that. However, you could fall behind in that as well. So if that all equates to a year, then you just pay another year's worth of amount. But it all leads to intricacies again. So that's why I fix an Islamic month, a lunar month, shall I say? That would be best.
And if you suppose you are calculating by taking all things into consideration, and still you feel that you may not be missing anything, you add something more on the zakat.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to add more, then there's nothing wrong with that, and you can still pay in the category of zakat. You'll get more reward, inshallah.
We've got a few questions from the sisters.
Yeah.
Shall I read it and then you know?
Or shall I just read them and then I'll... And
First one is, when do you actually pay the zakat?
can they hear you? So I think I'll just read them out and then, if you don't mind,
It's
yeah?
quite long, I've summarised for you.
Okay, you've summarized them. Yeah. You say it then.
Just say it on the mic.
No, you say it and then I'll just...
Okay. So they want to
Okay.
know when do you actually...
The question, we just got a few more questions from the sisters, so you can just summarize the questions.
So the first question is, when do you actually make the zakat payments?
When do you actually make it?
Yeah. So you've got your zakat year, you've calculated on the day. When do you physically pay the amount that's due?
So you pay the zakat on the day of your anniversary. So when your zakat year ends on that same day, that's when you'll be paying.
So you calculate and pay the same day.
Yes, you calculate and pay on the same day, yes.
Okay. And is following up on that question, when does it have to reach the person that the zakat can accept zakat? Is that responsibility on you or?
So basically the answer to that is, as long as you know that you've given it to a poor person, obviously you've got time limits, sometimes it could take a day, it could take 2 days, but now we've got bank transfers, so it normally reaches there straight away. But as long as you've done to the best of your ability, you've forwarded it, then that's enough. However, later on, if you find out that it's not been given to the recipient, then you have to pay again. That will not be classified as absolved and discharged.
Okay. Next question is for if you're self-employed, you pay tax twice a year, so you save money to provision for that tax. So how does that reflect? And then your zakat year comes, but you've got that money saved to pay tax later in the year. So is that included in your zakat calculation, or is it not?
So so just a clarification, because you read the so basically you've got tax, you've still not paid it,
Yep.
right? And it stays with you. You just kept it to a side. So that's the question, isn't it? Now your zakat anniversary comes, lunar year has elapsed. So now will you have to pay zakat on that or not? That's what your question is. So the answer to that is yes, you have to pay zakat on that because you've not given it to the organization or whoever you have to give it to. You've not given it. It's still in your possession. So
I'm not sure whether you understood the question. In the zakat calculation, any liabilities that you have to pay in the coming year, you can deduct it from your calculation. So the tax is a liability. So if you've got cash on which you have to pay tax anyway in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, that cannot be included in zakat because that's a liability you're obliged to pay. So that's like a debt.
100%.
So that's a debt. So the tax that you owe to the government is a debt upon you, which you have to pay at a particular time of the year, which is usually the 10th of February or 30th January. So that has to be deducted from your savings because that is not your money, that's the government's money. So that's a liability because in calculation for zakat, from the money that you have, you can deduct the liabilities that you have for the coming year, don't you?
yes,
That's allowed.
yes.
So therefore, that is a liability. The tax is a liability. So you don't have to pay tax. You don't have to pay zakat on the tax amount.
Or any liability.
The question is, when do you have to pay that? If it's due upon you straight away, then that could be classified as a liability. But what I understand the question is that you don't have to pay. It's due upon you after the zakat year. That's when it's due. That's the question.
They're just saving.
They're just saving. It's just savings in this question. So
Approximate. So yeah, you've got the tax which is going to be due, but you don't know how much it is.
yes. So
and your
and
zakat
yeah.
year comes.
So that's what. So in this question, it was different. It's until the date you're not sure when you have to pay, etc. Until then you don't you can't deduct it. But yes, when you're sure, then you're correct. It will be classified as a liability. Yes. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes. So this one they've used first of Ramadan as your nisab year. So you go over the threshold and you're over the nisab. The following year, first of Ramadan comes and this time you're below nisab. But when it comes to about Dhul Hijjah, you're above the nisab again. So does that mean a new zakat year starts on
Yes.
the first of Dhul Hijjah?
Yes. When you become owner of nisab again, so that's when your zakat year will start. That's correct.
And finally, can you be more cautious? Can you overpay zakat?
Yes, you can overpay zakat. You don't have to. If you do, then inshallah you'll get more reward. There's nothing wrong with overpaying. Yes. Inshallah, is that bring us to an end?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Okay, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, brothers. Jazakumullah for attending. If you've got any questions, inshallah, you could contact this hotline number that we were mentioning, and you could contact them.